Exactly.
So, we're going to be looking at ways to make sure the council and budget committee has information not just once a year, but throughout the year.
Well, yeah, because ultimately it's the council and the mayor's responsibility and ours to make sure that you're doing what's right.
Right, and understand this about me. I don't want to put myself in a position where I surprise you. I mean, that does me no good. I mean, that just makes no sense for a thinking person. Okay, so it's in my best interest and my motivation to make sure you're in the same boat with me, understanding where we're going.
Oh, we appreciate that.
Yeah. After our training the other day, too, I talked to both Gary and Dean, and I want to have a 6-month checkup so that we will all get back together again as a committee and do a checkup on the budget. And then also that you all will get the monthly reports along with City Council, so that if one of you see something, then you can talk to us and then we can look at it.
Good.
Well, another question is expertise, right? I mean, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I run a private business, but I don't know city business. So you guys just both brought up, we missed this last year as a committee, right? So you could tell us a lot of things, and it would just sound great, and it might end up slowly chipping away at our budget, right? So are there common metrics that are things? Contingency fund is what I see as a good concrete number. Where's it at now? Where's it going to be at, right? Are there maybe some sort of concrete numbers that we can use to track that are actually...
Yeah, you look at your revenue trends, your expenditure trends, and the two of those together determine whether your fund balance is going up or down. Mm-hmm. Those are the main ways we track that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that makes sense.
That's what I was trying to show you here tonight. I don't know if you've seen this kind of thing before, but you can expect this from me going forward. Then I'll continually show you what the trends are.
I love this. I thought this was the best thing I've seen, actually, so thank you for that.
We haven't seen that before.
Cool.
So we're going to move on to that.
Yeah.
Now we get into the budget.
Yeah, thanks for answering those questions.
Thank you.
They were really important.
So just real quick, just take a few minutes and just go real quick through the budget, see how it's laid out. I'm not going to go into a bunch of numbers yet. We'll let all the directors come up after this, and they can go through and do the details of their budgets, and you can get questions from them on the details. What is... Oh, we're supposed to be having oh, that comes after we do this presentation bit. So we have presentation, then we're going to open public hearing. Okay. So real quick, budget document. Let me get through. Manager's message. If you haven't read that, that's a really good place to start. Read through that. Gary's written some good detail in there. We put that together. Going through here, page 1 through 3 is the manager's budget. Pages 4 and 5 are a couple of charts, kind of compared to what Gary showed you. This is a breakdown of the city's revenues, the 47 million, where it comes from. Page 5 is a breakdown of the 47 million expenditures, kind of where we put it, and you can kind of compare to last year. Kind of how we broke down last year. So just kind of charts here. Page 6 is a good spot just to kind of compare where we are to last year. Here's last year's revised budget, our proposed budget, our differences, and the changes in the budget. It's kind of a graphical, it's down, it's down, it's up, it's down. Just kind of a quick graphical look of what budget's up or what budgets are down. So page 8, 9, 10, 11. These ones here break down. Well, Gary was saying we have the different categories of budget. So first part, it's general fund. You can kind of get this is a snapshot of the general fund. The actuals for the last couple of years, the current budget, and then our proposed, and the changes in the budgets.
I might just add here, these are really important pages if you want
Yeah.
the overview of the budget. It's in these few pages. You can see the overview of everything in the budget. And like I said before, I was talking about sometimes losing track of the forest for the trees. This is where you can get a good look at the forest, because it's all right there in consolidated numbers in just a few pages.
Yeah, this is where you can get a snapshot and say, oh, look, the general fund had this change. Here's all of our debt service funds. There was a change in debt service. Then you just walk down through it, and you've got your enterprise funds. You know, their budgets went up 12%, and you can kind of look and say, well, where was it? Was it in personnel? Was it in what? Did their revenues go up? This is just a snapshot of all the different funds. And if, once you get down here to capital project, goes through all the different kinds, get down to page 10, you get a snapshot of the total city budget. And when I say city budget, that's everything without URDs. So that's, like I say, the general, the capital, the special revenues, the debt service. So there's where the $41 million that Gary was talking about of debt service. If you jump up there about 3 lines, you'll see the 9.77. We gotta have this little pointer thing here. Here's that 9.72 that he was talking about, which is the transfers out. So if you want the true actual budget without transfers, you take that minus that, and that gets you down to that, what, 35 or 30, million that Gary was talking about. Because it dumped up there. Then we drop down, and here's all the URD budgets. This is all 3 of them added together. The $6-point-something million budget. And then we do one chart saying, here's the entire budget, city, general fund, URDs, everything. 47 million. For some folks, this is an interesting chart. I use this for my debt service. This is all of our debt service, our balances, and when we're going to be out of debt. So if you look up here, you'll see that, I'm losing my voice. I thought I wrote these down. If you look here, you'll see that water debt service, we make our last water debt service payment in 2021. We make our last sewer debt service, it's out here in 2030. URD debt service goes away in 2028, and general fund debt service goes away in 2028. That general fund debt service, that's basically the payment on your police department and library. That's the main debt service here.
Are those URDs all on the same timeline? Are they all going to expire at the same year, or are they kicking off at different times?
The only URD that really has an issued bond is the Northwest. So these are only Northwest bonds. The other 2 have some debt, but they're through economic development agreements like with Samaritan Health, where we're paying them back a portion of their debt over 20 years, and we're paying back a portion of taxes to them.
So this is just the Northwest?
Northwest is the only URD that has an issued bond.
And at what point do other agencies begin to be able to draw off a little bit of revenue? Is there like a 75% rule or something like that? Where
Right now, with the Northwest URD, since we did the amendment number 4, it's a weird thing. The state did this a few years ago, that when you do a major amendment, you have your frozen value that are in URDs. Well, when you do another major amendment, now that you have a second frozen level, so our taxes in the Northwest URD are frozen. It's somewhere between 2.6 and 2.7 million. We're frozen there. So any taxes above that are they call them that we share after that, and they go. I don't remember, but 75%, other agencies 25% URD, or the other way around. But there's a share with anything over 2.6 million.
So when we have to reach that point.
Yeah. So I think when we did our amendment number 4, the contractor from Portland said we'd probably start sharing. I think it's next year. But that also depends. If we lose the Lowe's thing, we'll never share.
It depends on assessed value.
Yeah, because all of a sudden we're going to lose $700,000 of our assessed value, and we'll never get to the 2.6 million for quite a few years if we lose Lowe's, which
right.
we're in that appeal now. So if that happens, which we're pretty confident we won't, but there'll be no sharing, so. So then, once you get down past the debt service, when Gary is talking about transfers, if you look at the next few pages, it's pages 14 to 17, you'll see these yellow pages. You can trace all the transfers throughout the budget. You know, the first few lines are where it's going to, and the bottom is part like where it's coming from. So the revenue is to, the expense is where the money's coming from. Example, this one here is provide for salaries. Like in the general fund, we have all of our engineers show up in the general fund. But the engineers are actually paid for out of water, sewer, streets, every place else. So when you go in here, we've got $1.9 million being transferred into the general fund. I think 900,000 of that is engineers. And if you go to these other places, they're all spread out amongst here where the money's coming from to pay for the engineers. So we're moving the money over. Yeah, that's Ron back there. That's his salary. So you can kind of catch out on all these. You know, here's the PERS bond. We pay this year. Our PERS bond is $177,000. Here's who's paying for the PERS bond. It's based on the spread of salaries. So if you go down to the bottom of that, you come up with, here's the $12,214,000 total of transfers. So like what Gary was saying, when you think of this 12 million, when you go back to the budget, that basically inflates the budget by $12 million because we've double budgeted that. You know, once when it goes out, you know, here's this one here, to provide funds for urban renewal projects. You know, there's one expense when it comes out of here, and then another expense in this fund where we come in as a revenue. Well, there's also an expenditure in that revenue. So when it's spent here, then it's spent in that fund. So we've double budgeted. So that is that. And then you go from there. This is budget process, budget calendar, overall, and then we get into starting with pages 23 to 199. That's all the line item details of the budget. And the way Oregon budget law is, when we look at the general fund here, we'll just take administration. It's real easy. It's here. Blow it up a little bit so you can see it actually. So this is the administration. What we're doing is, you're not approving these lines right here, you know, the in-between numbers. What you're doing is you're approving $251,000 for this administration budget. Because the way Oregon budget law is, we budget to the bottom line. The in-between, you know, I'll just say, the manager could spend $251,000 on salaries and nothing else here, and according to budget law, that's fine, as long as he does not go over this bottom line. You know, they don't want to track, are you $10 over on this one, $5 over on that one? They just want to make sure in total we don't go over. That's how it works. And this comes down to, when you look at the resolutions later, we did a lot of talking with the state and everybody and our auditors. We've changed the way we've written our resolutions, and I think I put new copies on your desk of how we're changing our resolutions. And this is to help with the issue with the auditors on, you know, where in one special revenue fund, we're over by $5, another one we're under by 1,000, but we get written up for being over. They said if we write our resolutions this way, those things won't happen. So it'll take care of some of those little issues. So that gets us down to page 199 of the budget. If you jump back to page 200 and something back here, all the detail, the in-between stuff, URDs, where am I at? When you're flipping through, you'll see you'll get to a group where it says all these green pages. The green pages are the inactive funds. What that means is, if you'll notice, on all the inactive funds, the way we have to do it, they stay inactive until they fall off all the numbers here. So, because they have to add into the totals at the bottom, because they still have actual numbers over here. So until these all roll off the end, and you'll see like this one here, Next year, this one goes away completely, because it has 2012 as the last year it has any numbers in it. But until they roll off this end, they have to show in the budget. So that's why you'll keep seeing an inactive section. And as we eliminate more funds over the next few years, they'll move into the inactive fund, they gotta stay there for about 3 years until they go away.
This is of the 67 funds, correct? That was-
Yeah, now, these are not included in the 67, these are part of the other 30 or 40 that we've already gotten rid of.
Oh, I see, you're right, yeah, but the 67, and as they are eliminated,
Yeah.
then they will show up in here.
Yeah, when you're counting the 67, that would be all these ones up here that are in orange.
Yeah.
Those are the active ones. Where am I at here? Go past all the inactive funds. And then we get into authorized personnel. So these are the personnel we're authorizing here. So we're coming down through each department. When there's a yellow mark, that's something that was changed this year. You can see it went from 1 to 0. If it goes up or down, I just kind of put it in yellow so you can see what the change was. And it comes down to the bottom. Here's where Gary was saying, we had a little bit over 100 FTEs last year. We're down to 89.893 FTEs this year, a change of 10.953 FTEs. And then the next few pages are the salary schedules with each union, part-times, and the exempt. And then we get into all the organizational charts, basically for each department. So that's a quick overview of what's in the budget, and then the last part is just all the resolutions that we've got to take to council.
That's money.
What's our current PERS rate?
Current PERS rate, I have that right down here. It's for Tier 1 and Tier 2, 15.61. The Osprey, or what, I don't know why they don't call them Tier 3, 11.67, and then Police Tier 3 is 14.40. And they'll be exactly the same for this year because they're on a biannual change. So we're on the second year of those rates. There'll be a change in those in the next budget cycle.
And that 11.21, that's the, on this spreadsheet that we got here.
What I do is I use one number. I kind of average them out.
It's an aggregate
Yeah, it's an
number.
aggregate of all of them to where we get that.
And then,
Because it'd be really hard to go through and create spreadsheets saying who's in which tier and kind of tracking them all the time and which switches and make sure you're charging the right rates. So we basically charge the same rate,
which unions are we currently in negotiations with?
all of them.
AFSCME and Teamsters?
We're open with Ask Me for salaries only for the period, and with the Teamsters for a full contract.
So they just have an opener for salary?
Right.
But Teamsters full
It's
package?
a full package.
And I see here we've got 0% that's for 2014, our budgeted amount?
We didn't want to put that out there, but yes, that's what's in there.
Okay.
With all the budget cuts, we put a 0 in there right now.
Okay.
And that's for, if you'll notice, it's for everybody,
What's the PT under AFSCME? Is it part-timers?
Part-timers.
Okay.
because they're on the different pay scale. And if you go back to the pay scales at the end, you'll see that they have their own pay scale.
And then our workers' comp insurance is going up 15%?
We're not sure, we're waiting to see. We've held the line really good. We've only had, is Debbie still here? How many claims have we had this year, Debbie? Like 4. Just 4, and they've been very minor. So we're hoping
we
it's not
project-
going to.
Okay.
You know, the same thing with our property insurance, we put a 15%, which that could come true because when they brought out their numbers, I think the actual change was like 21% for property, but then it was lower for autos. But we've had almost no claims this year. So hopefully our claims history will offset part of the increases, so we'll come out really close. And hopefully we'll come in under what we projected. But again, being conservative, because insurance is always the wild card out here.
What is our mod factor for workman's comp right now?
For workers' comp, last year, for the last so many years, it was under 1. Last year, we went up to 1.4, 1.04, 1.05. So we're hoping it's going to go down this year, because like I said, we've had minor claims this year so far. There's got to be wood here someplace. But even in our other part, we've had very minor claims on our property and stuff too. So hopefully, we're going through renewals now, so we'll know here in a couple of months what our renewal stuff is. And then in October, we'll go back for health insurance renewals. Last year we had a 0% increase. We'll see what we get this year on health insurance. We did really good last year. So,
Dean, before you move on, on the COLA increases where you guys chose to use 0%, if those numbers were, say, 2%, how many dollars is that, roughly, appropriated dollars?
I think I gave that here.
Throughout the budget, each 1% is about $83,000.
On that COLA one? On the
Yeah.
COLA?
Right.
That's salary and payroll expense related to the salary.
Okay, so that'd be, if for some reason you went to negotiations or binding arbitration, as we talked about in our training, and we lost out, that could be 83,000 at 1% COLA, or,
Right.
249,000 at 3% COLA.
If the 1% was given to all
All four.
employees.
All four
If
groups.
it's just one bargaining unit, it's going to be some subset of the 83,000.
Oh, okay, right, right.
Yeah.
So 1% on each one is still only 83,000.
Right.
Okay.
For
Makes sense.
all areas of the city staff, it'd be 83,000.
Okay. So just real quick, you saw from the other slides, we've put in like a 2% assessed value adjustment, county collections of 93%, compression at 100. There's no change in the PERS rate, because again, we're in the 2-year biennium. That'll be looking at that next year. The proposed budget has a decrease of right around almost 11 FTEs, spread across all the departments. The directions given to the directors, or instructions given to the directors for the budget was, look at the current year budget, their end-of-the-year estimates, where we worked real hard to get those end-of-the-year estimates down to make this year balance. In all cases, the end-of-the-year estimates are less than this year's budget. We kind of said, that's our starting point. We want to try to get the next year's budget at that point. And I think I looked at it the other day, and I think pretty much every director got this proposed budget under their end-of-the-year estimates. So they sharpened their pencils really hard to try to, what could they cut and what could they, to make this work. So they worked real hard to get to get it down to. So the budgets aren't only less than last year's budget, they're less than last year's end-of-the-year estimates, which we cut a lot. So, and Gary's correct, this year our contingency is right around 5%. We're hoping that by the end of the year that will go up, that the directors, even though their end of the year estimates are cut, right now they're all under what they're projecting. They're just not spending money, they're trying to hold it. So hopefully we're going to carry over more than what we're projecting, which will give us a better spot for next year to start working on for the reserves in next year. So with that, we're going to stop here, and if there's no more questions, we're ready to move on to this public hearing on special revenue.
Okay, or would this be an appropriate spot if anyone has any specific dollar questions to ask on general fund issues?
Any general questions before we get into all the departments? If you have any revenue questions, we could do that now, because that's part of what, what I did those and with those, other than property tax. I can tell you, when we go through all the other revenues like franchise fees, I've got a spreadsheet that says, here's the last 6 years, kind of what it's been for the last 6 years, and we kind of look and say, if it's been averaging 2, we do 2. And again, like franchise fees, we won't know about those until come spring when the telephone company, the gas company all announce what they're going to, how they're going to raise their rates. Because their rates go up, our franchise fees go up. Their rates go down, our franchise fees go down. Because it's based on that. So, but it's, you know, like if you want to see the spreadsheet, I've got it laid out. I think I've got the last, like 8 years of what we've got out of those to kind of look at as we go forward.
How's our alertness level? Do we want a 5-minute break or something? Yeah, let's take 5 at least. We'll open now a public hearing to discuss the possible uses of state revenue sharing funds. Do we note the time? 8:22. Who's presenting?
Dean, you want to explain revenue sharing?
So what we have to do each year is first press my button, is the state, they send out, and they actually send out about 3 reminders saying, don't forget to do these resolutions. They send you like 3 copies, because if you don't send these resolutions in by June 30th, you get no revenue sharing money. So they really push it. So we have 2 resolutions in the budget. One certifies that we either provide police service, fire, water, sewer, storm drain, street, planning services. And then we say below that we do provide these services. So we're authorized there. Next resolution basically says that we held a public hearing to see how people want us to spend our revenue sharing money. So it's 2 things. We have to prove to them that we do the services, then we have to prove to them that we held a public hearing and ask the public how they would like us to spend these. So that's what this part is about, is that get the public hearing portion of that done. Revenue sharing, we get basically straight revenue sharing money. We get cigarette tax money, we get alcohol tax money, we get street money from ODOT. So we get different kinds of revenue sharing monies. Each of these, some of them are directed that would have to be put right in for streets, like the ODOT money. When we get that check each month, it is set by state that we put 99% into streets, 1% goes to parks. So we divide that up, and so it's put into the park enterprise fund and the street fund. You know, cigarette tax, alcohol tax, and the revenue sharing all goes into the general fund to be used for, like, police. You basically say we use it all for police services when it comes to the general fund. So that's what this portion of the meeting's about. Is there any questions? Any public comment?
Yes, does anyone from the public have anything to say about possible uses of state revenue sharing funds? Seeing none. Anyone from the board here? Okay, take it, Dean. Do we read? Is that you?
You want me back?
Come to the table. Come join us.
You should scoot over in the middle.
Oh, that's too presumptuous. You can go ahead.
I'm a man of routine. I'm going to screw up now that I'm over here. Where are we at?
All these are urban renewals that I've got here.
I don't think the committee is required to pass the resolutions. What we have to do is just hold the public hearing here, and then you
Just to
guys...
say that we did.
And then we've held the public hearing, and then it'll go on to the council, and the council will approve the resolutions at the council meeting.
You make an overall recommendation to the
Yeah,
council.
when we get to the end, we'll make an overall recommendation for the revenue sharing and to forward these budgets onto the council, either as presented or as amended, and then it goes to the council with that recommendation, and then they would approve each resolution, and then at that point.
Do I hear a motion?
I move that the Budget Committee recommend the city council adopt the resolution certifying the city of Lebanon that provides municipal services for eligibility and receiving state shared revenue payments as noted on page 239.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? And we will now close the public hearing at 8:26. Now we'll open up to the public for any input on the city's proposed budget. It just says input. Seeing none, I will close the public input. We'll open it now for department director presentations.
So first one will be the city manager for administration, human resources, and the city attorney budget. I believe the budget's 110, 116, and 120.
So this would be in the general fund. So in, hold on a minute now. Where are we? So page 27 is what's called Administration and Economic Development. As you see, the personal services is down from 315, we're estimating for the current year, to 214, so a full 100,000 less. That reflects in part the personnel reductions that we saw this past year. Materials and services is down significantly too, from 63,000 down to about 29. And then transfers out is down a little bit, but overall we're going from a budget this year of 387,000 down to about 251,000. So there's just a whole lot of cutting going on there, and just trying to focus on core things related to administration. So if you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to try to answer to them.
Let me throw one comment, just real quick. If you notice there's some yellow marks on the budget here, there was a budget amendment we passed at the last city council meeting. That was, I already had this budget prepared, but I knew that those things were being presented to council. So there was a budget amendment, so when we go to the city council, those numbers will be different, but that will reflect the actual budget amendment. That was to take care of the city manager and between city managers. And you'll see that in about 4 different budgets. We made an amendment, but it was after this was already presented, so there's only one change.
So are there any questions about the administrative division of the general fund on page 27? There are detail pages towards the back of the document. Page, geez, these are different page numbers. If you go to the tab that's called detail sheets, page 1 of 94 gives some detail about each of the line items, and it gives you the background of what each of those budget items is budgeted for.
Can I clarify something without getting into much detail?
Yeah.
It sounds like, if I was hearing you correctly from before, your general goal was to decrease our spending as much as possible without eliminating those core functions that we need in order to continue providing the services that we as a city are currently providing.
And what that looks like in the administrative division is that I no longer have an administrative assistant. That's probably the major change this coming year. And actually, that situation exists now. That position was eliminated a couple months ago, and so we're projecting that forward to the next year. So that's what we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions about that division? Okay, the next one I'm reporting to you on is human resources. and that is the division where our human resource, hope I get Debbie's title right, administrative assistant, is funded from. And so that would be on page 29, and then there's the detail pages show up on the detail section at the back of the budget, page 3 of 94. So overall, that budget is actually up, because I don't believe, you guys help me out on this, I don't believe that we paid for the HR assistant out of this department the prior year.
Last year, the HR assistant was paid out of administration.
Right. So there's some moving around of the shells, if you will. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know this or if Dean knows. The large difference between the 2013 actual and the 2014, is that the elimination of the assistant city manager? Was that part of that salary coming from that?
Yes.
Okay.
That salary was up there. Actually, the 2005, there was part of the, that was part of the severance agreement with the assistant city manager. Oh, I should go over here to yell at me. That was part of the severance agreement, and in the last budget amendment, we got rid of that, because that was one of the items that we had budgeted out. Then after year end, the auditor said, well, you guys know about it, and they brought that whole $44,000 back into last year and put us over budget. Oh. So that was one of the items that did that to our last year's budget.
Okay.
So yeah, there's a lot of changes represented in human resources compared to what it used to be used for. But you're correct, Mr. Mayor, that the assistant city manager used to be accounted for there.
Used to be that. Used to be the assistant city manager, the payroll clerk, and then Debbie went out of this one. And then last year we moved payroll to finance, assistant city manager away, and the admin went up to the city manager's office.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there are no more questions on that. My last division to report to you on is legislative, which shows up on page 41. This is the section, 120, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm the newbie.
Oh, Linda says you can do it if you want.
I'll let Linda do it. Oh, the city attorney, I guess we need one of those. That's on page 31. It's a pretty simple division. Simply has the city attorney's contract, and then an amount of $19,000 for any situation where we end up having to go to outside counsel. So it's just those two items. And so if you have any questions about those, I'll attempt to respond.
It looks like this number is increased as well. Am I on
Yeah, well,
page 31?
if you look at what was actually budgeted for this current year, 156, it is the same as what's budgeted for the coming year. It's just that so far, we've underspent that number, and we believe that by the end of the year, we're going to spend less than was budgeted for. So this is a case where we have appropriation authority to spend 156, but we probably aren't going to need to. So the delta, or the difference in those numbers is a budget savings.
Okay.
You are correct, there is an increase here. If you look at the outside attorney fees, we did move a number from the HR budget. We had some of those HR attorneys in the HR budget. We've moved all the attorneys that we might need for outside help into this budget now. So that's why that went from 5,000 to 19,000. It's just realignment within the budget.
And on that note, I'll just say one of my goals will be to not, from year to year, move the shells around so much that it's hard to keep track of where the heck anything is. I recognize that that's some of what we're seeing here, and so moving forward, we'll try to stabilize all of this, and it'll make it easier for us to tell year to year what's going on. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Walt? So next, Walt, he'll be going over community development and the building inspection services special
Thank you, Dean, members of the Budget Committee, councilors. I'm looking at two budgets here. One is the general fund, 126 for our planning services. A little background, Community Development Department does two basic services. One is planning and one is building. The planning is a general fund service, if you will, and building comes out of sort of an enterprise fund. Just quickly summarize, planning, we handle all the planning and zoning activities within the city, everything involved from talking to folks at the zoning counter, doing staff reports, manning the planning commission and city council meetings, working with developers, and a little bit of economic development as well. Also, I think it's important to note that the planning services, or I should say the department as a whole, any permits you really need are going to be coming through our building, if you will. That includes things like hanging banners across Main Street to public event permits. If you need a park reservation, including the RV, et cetera, it all flows through the department. Fortunately, we've been able to maintain most of those services. Currently, we're operating at an FTE of 1.8, and we do contract services for the building function. Excuse me. And I don't anticipate any major changes in terms of planning and development for the forthcoming fiscal year, or maybe I'm simply saying I'm hoping we don't, because I don't know if we have the resources available right now. So with that in mind, I'm not anticipating any special projects, but hoping simply to maintain what we're doing at this juncture. Also note that, you know, we've gone through a number of cuts over the years. I'm proud to say that we're keeping open 46 hours a week to the public, still working with them. Fortunately, right now it's a little quiet, and I certainly hope it stays that way for a little while. Overall, our budget, we've actually dropped it another $7,000. I think if you look at the numbers, we had $268,000 for 2013 and some change, looking at $11,000 for this year, and I think we're going to be under that. And next year, we're looking at about, we're requesting $204,000 for that. With that, I'd be happy to answer your questions you may have with regard to the planning aspect of it. Okay, if not, flip over to, let's see, on mine, be page 100 for special revenue fund for building. As I noted, we do not have a building official or inspector. We contract out through the Building Department LLC out of Springfield. This firm provides a building official for us. They also do plan review. Basically, we are a full-service organization. The only thing we do not do is electrical permits. We simply do not have the work to justify a separate electrical inspector. We've been able to maintain our turnaround times. I have to say that the feedback I do receive is that we are fast, if not quicker, than a lot of full-service, fully staffed agencies. And I want to thank our building official, Sean Eaton, specifically for assisting in that. We have pretty quick turnaround time. We're able to keep up with the work. I'm not anticipating any major projects coming down the road like we've had over the last couple of years. ODVA, the hotel coming in, I mean, some pretty big projects that will probably slow down a little bit. So far, though, I think last year, Mr. Bowling, you asked, or one of you asked, I'm just looking at that side of the table for some reason, asked if you're pressured, how do you know that you're not granting the service? And that's when I get nasty phone calls. So far, those have not occurred. We've been able to maintain our service level. Again, one advantage of having a contract operation is that the budget can be a little bit flexible, and I mean that in a positive way, that if we need to actually spend more money, and I think this year we came back for a budget resolution to modify that, it's because we have more work to do. So effectively, if we're spending more, it's because we're making more. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on the building side of the community development. Excuse me.
I had a question. You said there, you're not anticipating any more larger projects. Is the hotel included in that as well?
Well, the hotel, the permit's already been submitted, so we're moving forward with that. There are projects, shall I say, in the pipeline, but maybe it's more in the thought pipeline at this point. No one has actually made an application. As I said, the planning aspect is pretty straightforward on most of these. That doesn't take the time, if you will. It's mainly the building. And with that, again, we have that flexibility using a contract service. I just don't anticipate looking at even hiring a full-time building official for some time to come.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
No, Jason, he'll be talking parks and streets.
Thanks, Dean. Members of council and the budget committee. Starting off in parks on page 36 and 37, the budget, you'll notice we have kind of held the line as far as materials and services with everything, with the exception of utilities. Utilities is kind of out of our control, what we pay for the lights and water and sewer. And gas for the buildings. We're down at a level that allows us to keep our facilities the level of service we provide right now, but we're right there. We won't have much more wiggle room in this fund. It's pretty cut. We're deferring any large improvement projects. It's just going to be a routine basic maintenance function. Business as usual. Yes? Any questions on that fund?
So this is just for maintenance, and this does not include anything. I remember reading through last year's minutes about the reason the contingency fund, part of the money that was going to go to increase that was going to go to start planning for building improvements like for River Park. So this is not on any of those. This is just for maintenance, right?
Yeah, this is just for maintenance. There's a parks grant fund. Actually, that $50,000 that was moved into Fund 820, our equipment acquisition, facility acquisition account, that remained in the general fund this year as part of the reductions in the current fiscal year's budget. So we do not have that $50,000 as of now. We were able to find an additional grant that will offset the match requirement for the city as far as cash is concerned. So we're still moving forward with that project if we awarded both grants that we've applied for. The only thing we'll be out is staff time and equipment. We won't have any cash payment to match either one of those grants. So we're optimistic. Each grant will be used to offset the other grant's match requirements. So there's no cash out of our pocket. That's the River Park restroom building replacement.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, there are at least 2 grants that you have worked to acquire that are going to allow for the replacement of those bathrooms?
Correct.
And do we know the time frame for that?
I think we find out, it was May, wasn't it, Rob?
This summer,
July, August of
this year. So so last year, according to the minutes that I read, there was $50,000 appropriated to just start the process of trying to, put a little bit of money aside to plan for the new restroom there. And so now what you're saying is, actually, no longer does the city have to put out any cash, but also you've acquired grants in order to fully fund that?
We haven't acquired them yet. We've applied for them.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see.
We're optimistic.
Okay, but pending approval then, that will be no money out of the city's budget, but also we'll get new restrooms at River Park.
Correct.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So essentially, the money that we argued over last year got put in the general fund and then went towards the reductions.
No,
correct?
it was actually a transfer to Fund 820. We just never completed that transfer. That money remained in the general fund.
And last year we had a different outlook than we did this year, so
Absolutely.
you can only look so far back. I'm really glad to hear it. We kind of thought is what, 150 to 250,000 for the bathroom? So if you've got
$250,000.
two $50,000 grants, how the bathrooms get paid for? How big are these grants that you're talking about?
The $250,000 for both applications.
Okay.
The 50,000 was for the money that was
Right.
set aside in the budget last year.
And that's not money that we will get, that's total project cost. So each grant is a 60-40 split. We're responsible for 40% of the grant amount. Well, both grants will offset that 40% city requirement. So,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah, it's funny finance, but it does make sense. I'll just swallow it.
Yeah. It was either that or a bake sale.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
And Jason, I appreciate your guys' work in doing that and finding a way to make that happen. It was-
that's awesome.
Because it was the intent of us just to get it to happen, not necessarily where that money came from, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Any other questions on Parks Department?
I had a question then on that, does that decrease the amount of maintenance needed at that area?
I do not believe it'll decrease the amount of maintenance. It'll just be an easier level of maintenance. Right now, with the deteriorating structure and plumbing and all the problems that we have in that building, just keeping it clean and in order will be a lot easier of a task for us. So, time consuming nonetheless.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, you're welcome. My next fund, Dean, you just want me to do streets? Okay. You don't want me to do building maintenance or Crystal or anything? How about Parks Enterprise? Okay. Okay. Well, that's Jill's landing. Actually, my next fund will be the custodial and maintenance services on page 114 and 115 of the budget. This is the fund that's responsible for all the janitorial and light maintenance of all the city-owned facilities, City Hall, Justice Center, Library, Senior Center, maintenance shop. We do all those facilities with one FTE. That was a reduction that we saw this last fiscal year. And that budget has seen no change other than kind of just holding steady. Any questions on that fund?
It says the fund has reduced staff now operating with only one FTE. Can you remind me, how many FTE decrease was that?
-1.
Oh, -1, okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Go to Fund 558, our Streets Maintenance Fund. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, 120 and 121. This fund is funded, special revenue fund through gas tax allocation. We've actually seen an increase in revenue in this fund. Last year, we feel that we'll stay steady again next fiscal year with that increase in revenue. With that increase in revenue, we've been able to pick up small overlay projects, help with some other improvements as far as asphalt condition is concerned. This fund used to get a transfer from the general fund of $150,000 to offset the street light costs, costs having those throughout the city. We no longer get that transfer. but the fund is holding steady. No major changes. Any questions?
Do you know why that fund was stopped? Or why that transfer was stopped? Was it just general fund issues, or?
General fund woes.
Okay.
Any other questions on streets? Okay. Final special revenue fund I'll speak about is our boat ramp maintenance assistant fund. We get funding assistance from Oregon State Marine Board for Gills Landing boat ramp and Cheeto Lake boat ramp. We apply every year for that funding and continue to receive it. It's to help offset the maintenance costs, repairs and upgrades to those facilities. Set amount every year. I see no major changes in that fund. Any questions on that? Okay. Okay.
139, that's our equipment replacement fund, which part of that is, a number of departments have parts of this, so a number of people will hit this next fund.
820 this year for operations. We're going to replace one of our little 2-yard dump trucks. And we're going to replace a backhoe for our maintenance division. We are also going to do some, not with the operations side of the funding, but we're going to do some improvements to City Hall's HVAC system that we're currently working through now that will come out of this fund as well for operations. We try to keep a healthy reserve in here. All of our maintenance utility funds, special revenue funds, and even the Parks General Fund contribute every year to this Fund 820, so we're able to replace equipment as it becomes time to replace it. Any questions on that? Yes. Actually, 105 next year, next budget year. And then the improvements maintenance, 123, 441, those are for shop site improvements at 4th and Oak, and then also the HVAC upgrades at City Hall. And hopefully a roof. Any other questions on that? Well, that's all I have for you, so thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So now it's back to me for a few departments. First one is the Finance Department on page 39. So the Finance Department does the full range of financial. We do all the financial statements, audit, billing of water, sewer. We work with STC funds. We kind of do a little bit of everything over here. This last year, we took over payroll. It moved back over to the Finance Department. And, we did reduce our staff by one person this year also. So Sarah here now has picked up the duties of payroll and doing an outstanding job. So we're trying to, maintain the work. We're open for, 50 hours a week to the public. Our staff comes in at 6:30, they open the public at 7 to 5. And through lunch, we kind of switch lunch, so they're open for 50 hours. So that's everything we do, audits, and then, of course, budget work. It's basically a full-service audit finance department for internal customers and external customers. So we meet with everybody. Any questions on the finance department? Yeah, as you can see, our budget reduced this year. Part of that was due to salaries. So, to make that reduction. So then we move over to municipal court. That's Department 170. In the next fiscal year, municipal court will be moving over to the finance department. 5 years ago, it used to be there, and then it was moved over to, I guess it was moved into the HR department with the assistant city manager kind of over there. It was overseen by her, and then Reba, assisted her with overseeing the courts. This next year, they're moving it back over to the finance department. They've had a reduction there of a half-time position. So a couple of things that they're doing this year. They've got a major software upgrade going on. That's been done with their Cassell, with their court software. They're moving to a different version of that, so that'll be a big project they're going through right now. That was all paid for when they went to the Cassell software. This part of the upgrade was an already paid upgrade because they were expecting this new version to come out. And then also, if you remember this last year, they had an amnesty program. Through the amnesty program, they brought in about $48,000 I've got some of that all cleared up. So that was a good, brought in a lot of work, but took care of a lot of outstanding tickets.
So the position that's moved into the finance department, is that correct?
Yeah, we're bringing the whole municipal court into the finance department. What it is the two clerks that work there, probably a big part of their job is accounting. They take care of money and invoice people, and so in most cities it's an accounting department function.
So are we going to expect more people moving around next year? Because I know that there's quite a few kind of positions moving around.
I hope not.
Okay. So the moving is mainly due to the budget decreases and...
No, not this one. This one's due because there's some changes at the police department. This used to be under the assistant city manager, used to be overseeing this. Well, when we removed the assistant city manager, now the police chief's over the court system, and that just doesn't look right. And so they've asked us to take it back over. Because it doesn't look right having the courts under the police department. There's a conflict of interest. Oh. So they asked us to take it back over, and so we're taking it back.
Okay.
Dean, going back to 140.
140, yes, sir.
There's a contract services line here.
Yes, okay, I should have. What that is when we eliminated the one position, what we did is we put $6,000 in here if we needed part-time help. So we're hoping not to spend that.
It's peak season stuff
Yeah,
or what?
for that, or if we find that we need help at certain times of the month for reporting or something, because, like I said, Sarah took over the payroll duties. Well, if we need help with something, we would use that to hire somebody through Barrett to do that.
So a temp agency would use?
A temp agency for that, if we need it. We're hoping we won't have to do that.
Okay.
Okay, other one I do is 195, which is the non-departmental fund. And that's on page 53. So this department accounts for a lot of the expenses around City Hall, like copy paper. We pay for it out of this fund because we just buy 40 cases and it's used by everybody in City Hall. You can't say who's using what. We pay for all the general fund insurance out of here, vehicles, buildings are all paid out of here. There's $4,000 in here for under city grants for Meals on Wheels. We went ahead and left that in. They requested that this year, so we went ahead and left that in there.